morning. You're watching Focus on South Texas. I'm Nileka Lincoln in for Karen Martinez. This morning, we're going to be talking about a party with a purpose, a way for you to have a good time while supporting a great cause. But first, something very important we want to make sure you know about. According to AAA, aggressive and careless driving causes 20,000 deaths each year just here in the United States. And those who make up the highest percentage of the pedestrian population are also at the highest risk for getting hurt, the blind and visually impaired. We want you to take a look at this PSA.
I take a walk of faith every time I step off that curb. It's only 50 feet, but I tell you, it feels like 50 miles. I've had so many near misses, I've lost count. The worst thing, a blind man right there in the crosswalk with nowhere to go.
Be aware when you're behind the wheel. If you see someone with a white cane or guide dog at an intersection, stop and yield. It's the law.
Remember, this cane is no match for this.
All right, well, you just saw, again, a very important message. And joining us now, of course, to tell us more about pedestrian safety and a new House bill that is helping to enforce the right of way for pedestrians, Larry Johnson, Jim Lawson, and Shelley McMullen. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for being here. This is an incredibly important topic. So let's start first with the issue of pedestrian safety, and then we'll talk about the PSA that's been put together, and of course the House bill that was passed, and how instrumental you guys were in making sure that that House bill got passed. But let's start first with the issue of pedestrian safety. Larry?
Well, you know, as you mentioned earlier, the national statistics are really impressive, and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration reports that approximately 70,000 people are injured by motor vehicles each year, that is pedestrians, and more than 5,000 are killed by motor vehicles. And to put these numbers in a proper perspective, that means every 8 minutes a pedestrian is hit by a car, and every 2 hours a pedestrian is killed.
Every 8 minutes, a pedestrian is hit by a car, and every 2 hours, a pedestrian is killed?
Right.
I mean, that's unbelievable. I don't think that the average person is probably aware.
And what's even more important is to recognize that persons who are visually impaired or persons who use walkers, children, and so on, represent a very high percentage of those figures of pedestrians, and so, therefore they are the most vulnerable group, because many times we don't know that a car is going to make a right-hand turn at a intersection. We can't hear it because it's a quiet car or because there's a lot of traffic noise. And if that motorist isn't paying attention, if they're looking to their left instead of to their right, it very possibly could result in a tragic accident.
That's so important, and we will talk about the difference in terms of quiet cars, as you just mentioned, and other natural noise indicators that used to be more helpful for those folks who are crossing the street. I know, Shelley, today you don't have your guide dog with you, you're between dogs, but very much so this is a reality even with a guide dog, and we'll talk about, I guess, if you can share with us some of the near misses that can cause your guide dog there to help you provide with assistance, give them fear, and what you need them to be is as confident as possible.
Well, first of all, I'd like to share that I've been a dog guide user since 1975, and the reason I got a dog was because on a college campus, I was almost hit by a car on the campus. Went to cross the street, no car in sight, and I'm halfway across, and here comes the car, and my cane was bent completely in half, and the person did not stop, so I had to get assistance back to the dorm because I didn't have any other way to go except by a sighted guide with someone. So that I started thinking about, I need to do something more that's safer for me. So what happens when you have a dog as a guide? That dog is trained to get you safely across the street after you give the command to forward. But if the person is feeling tensed up and afraid because of all the traffic and the crazy drivers, then the dog can feel that tension through the harness handle. And so we are taught in training to not lunge out into the street, to step carefully off the curb, and then to walk at a normal pace. Well, if you're afraid, you have a tendency to want to run across the street.
Right.
And that also makes your dog afraid, and it gets your dog into a really bad habit. So the whole situation can really do a psychological number on you.
And so it's that much more important, again, as we mentioned. And Shelley, don't worry, we can take care of that for you. Jim, we want to talk about with you as well. We want to make sure that our viewers at home understand, as we mentioned again, this is not just an issue for those who are visually impaired, but certainly for those that are disabled and you're in your wheelchair. How important is it, again, for you and the challenges that you face if people aren't paying attention as you're trying to cross the street?
It's a very big challenge. I used to be 6'3". Now I'm 3'6". I'm just like a child in stature, and people don't see you, especially when they're turning right on red. Before I moved to San Antonio, I was actually hit crossing on a walk signal because the driver was looking to her left rather than to the right, and she just flat ran into me in my wheelchair. So crossing streets is very dangerous for all of us. We have a little bit different situations, each of our disabilities, but it's still very dangerous.
Absolutely. Well, that's why this House bill is so important. First off, I want to say congratulations on all of the efforts, the lobbying that took place to ensure better pedestrian safety. And I want to actually put up some information. We're going to start with a graphic for information purposes only, of course, for anyone who's looking for more information on the Alamo Council of the Blind. And we have their contact information for you. You can call their number at 210-492-4420. You can visit their website at acbsatx.org, and of course their mailing address also on the screen. But let's talk about this House bill, and we have a graphic on some of the very basic points of this as well. House Bill 1343, and essentially what this means is drivers must come to a full stop at intersections or crosswalks, especially if they want to make a right turn, and especially where there are pedestrians carrying a white cane or using the assistance of a guide dog, or of course anyone in a wheelchair. This is now a misdemeanor offense if you fail to stop, and penalties can include a fine of up to $500, 30 hours of community service, and the best part of this bill is you have to serve your community service working for an organization that assists either the visually impaired or disabled, and you have to take sensitivity training, and in my opinion, you probably shouldn't be back behind the wheel. Let's talk about what this House bill will really do in terms of real-life application, Larry.
Well, first of all, it was a law even before this House bill passed that pedestrians are supposed to yield the right-of-way. And that's not just true in Texas, that's true nationally. But you know, in a national survey that was done about a year ago, it was found that 20% of motorists were unaware that under the law they should yield the right-of-way to pedestrians. So the new Texas law simply increases the penalty for those who fail to do so. One of the sad things, however, is that even many of the law enforcement members don't enforce this law.
Okay.
And so the problem here really is one of education. More important than raising the penalty is raising public awareness through education, and that's why we appreciate so much doing this interview with you here today, because it's an opportunity for us to get the message out. And as the PSA said, a cane is no match for a speeding car. So what we want to ask of motorists is to be considerate, to be watchful, and to be focused on people as well as on South Texas.
Right. I like that, Larry. I do want to mention we're almost out of time here, but there are a few things for drivers at home.